welcome back, everyone. And first, I apologize. It's been a little while. I've just seen Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and kind of on a delay. Didn't see it right away because, I haven't been able to post because I've been away. And I'm sitting here and I'm kind of procrastinating because I'm still not exactly sure how I feel about this movie. Um, Obviously, the first Indiana Jones is iconic. It's a classic. It's got moments. It's just packed with those Hollywood moments that have stuck with us. The second movie, I really enjoy. I saw it, I was the perfect age for it. I know that it's problematic now, but it's a lot of fun. Maybe it's not a great movie though. Thinking about the first movie again, there's maybe some issues with that, but the charm and the wit and the way it's put together overcome any problems it might have. The third and the fourth movies, well, the third one I can't even say that I've gotten through it. I know that I've tried watching it a couple of times and just kind of lost interest. The fourth movie, fucking Aliens, right? That was Crystal Skull. I don't really remember much except that I hated most of that movie. So here I am, not sure about the fifth movie, not sure about the Dial of Destiny going into it. But obviously, it's Indiana Jones, right? We have to see Indiana Jones and have to see Harrison Ford, who is, what is he, 84, 87 years old? And holy cow, it looks good. I mean, if I, in 40 plus years when I get there, I hope that I am as agile and nimble and capable as he is. I think it was Tom Hanks who said something about, why do people become stars? And it's not about good looks and it's not about talent. It's about the camera loving you and people wanting to see you on camera. And Harrison Ford has that. He has that charisma. He has that draw still. The camera, the eye, it's drawn to him. And James Mangold does a great job of really focusing on him and putting him in situations where he's capable of showing, what he can still do. The movie starts out kind of pre where we are now, where we are in the timeline. So it's back to World War II because, again, Nazis, like, come on, can we not just move on from the freaking Nazis in this series? And there's a whole red herring as he's trying to steal something from the Nazis, and then obviously, it's a fake, and then there's this whole sequence where he's been caught and he's escaping, and it felt like the intro to a video game. I literally am watching this and I'm expecting a QTE prompt to pop up like, oh, you need to break your bonds, press X quickly. Oh, the statue is falling, dive out of the way by hitting A, right? Like, I don't know. And he's de-aged, and they do this thing with this de-aging where the lighting is just kind of across his eyes, and that's throughout almost the entire sequence. And it's something that if you go back to, I think it's Star Wars 8, where Princess Leia, should have been dead, but they brought her back with CGI, and it's the same sort of lighting on the face, which I guess is a way to hide the lack of animation, but it just doesn't look quite right. And that whole sequence, it's just a little bit contrived. It's kind of like, oh, it's Indiana Jones. What do we have to do? Well, we have to have a motorcycle chase, and we have to be on top of a train. And that whole sequence with the train there are so many things in this movie that make no sense, right? So he's now gotten onto the train, and he's trying to steal the item back that he knows is a fake. And the Nazi, the bad guy, Schmidt, his name becomes Schmidt. I can't remember the actor's name, but he plays the bad guy in pretty much everything. he knows it's a fake, but then it doesn't matter because there's this Antikythera thing that Archimedes created, but no one's heard of, and it's been lost for 2,000 years. Except the Nazis already have it because they kind of have everything, and I mean that part is semi-realistic, right? Nazis did steal treasure from across the world, and depending on what stories you read or listen to or believe, a lot of those treasures are still hidden away in vaults and all that sort of thing. So what Indy's doing is trying to get this back so we can get it into a museum. The Nazis are trying to get it so that they can harness the power, but then they're also trying to find a way to win, because we're at the end of the war. It's 1945. We're at the end of the war. And then of course, everything goes wrong, and the device seems to be lost. And fast forward, I think 18 years, somewhere about there. So we're now, the astronauts have landed on the moon. So I believe that's 1967, somewhere about there, 67 to 69. And Indy is now aged, 20 years. So I guess we're supposed to be believing he's in his maybe mid 60s at this point. And his life has kind of fallen apart. The world has passed him by. And for me, at that point, there were two moments that were the saddest, right? Marion being gone. Spoiler, I'm sorry, I should have warned. Marion is gone. But for me, the saddest point was that Indy's drinking instant coffee, right? Like, come on, he's been around the world. He should be sort of famous, but he's this professor that's teaching a course to all these, bored college students. Now, I'm sorry, this course is a minimum 300 level, probably 400 level or master's course at a major university. Those students would not be that ignorant and disinterested. But, Indy has kind of, he's just professor. He's just going through the ropes. And we can tell that the time has passed him by, right? And there's this dichotomy between, looking to the future and looking to space, and do we look back? Do we care about the past anymore? And that is the most interesting part about this movie. Unfortunately, after the first, say, 20 minutes, it totally gets dropped. There's a scene you've seen in the trailers. If you haven't seen this movie yet, there's a scene in the trailers where Indy is riding a horse through the parade, right? And it's that, again, it's that callback. It's that split between Indy is old school and he's being chased by people on motorcycle, and, he's still holding on where everything else is moving forward. The problem with this whole thing is that the bad guys are also Nazis. And they're very obviously Nazis, though there's this big reveal later, and it's silly. But anyway, there's also CIA for some reason, and then the Nazi Schmidt, who also created the rocket that sent the astronauts to space, for some reason, has to meet with the president. But he's still after this Antikythera, and then it gets stolen, and then, I totally forgot, Helena Shaw, who's Indy's goddaughter, and is played by someone whose name, again, I totally forget right now. She's in Fleabag. It's on a show, it's on Amazon. But anyway, oh my gosh, I'm going really long here. So, barely through this movie. But it doesn't matter, because from there, it's one party chasing another, trying to get this device. And, what I love about these movies is that you have these items, these artifacts, these tombs that have been lost for 2,000 years, and no one has been able to find them, except as soon as they go to look for them, they're actually not very hard to find, right? They find all this stuff really easy, not even just the items, like the puzzles and the maps are really easy to come by. They find each other, like they're flying across the world, and they do that, I love when they do the thing across the map, showing where they're traveling. But for a while, this movie is more almost a Mission Impossible than an Indiana Jones, so that by the time it gets to actually, looking for artifacts in tombs, it's kind of a very secondary part to it. And for as much that they do that's clever, there are other things where, like, at one point they're crossing this rope bridge, and a major plot point where the bridge breaks and, people are going to drown or whatever. But then when they have to escape from the tomb, the bridge is just back. There are other parts where, people are soaked, they get wet, and then 30 seconds later, next scene later, they're totally dry. But there are moments like, so I think they're in Syracuse in Sicily, and you can see a puppeteer, and it's kind of like, well, why are they showing this puppeteer? Well, that's giving clues, and throughout the whole film you see different clues that show where it's going. And spoiler alert, sorry, it's going back in time. So it's all centered on Archimedes and the siege of Syracuse by the Romans, which was, I believe, 213 BCE, 214 BCE. It was a year-long siege. And so what ends up happening is, Jesus, the Nazis, somehow, they get, of course, they get all this stuff, and they're in Sicily, even though they didn't know that this is where the devices were that were going to give them the coordinates to be able to travel back in time. They have a whole Nazi army and plane there waiting for them for some reason. Okay, so anyway, they end up going back, and I hate time travel because none of this makes sense. They end up going back in time and meeting Archimedes, which also sets up that they were always supposed to meet Archimedes, which, again, going now to where there's something clever, a link to earlier in the film when you see Helena playing cards or doing card tricks, and she talks about the mark, you're always meant to pick that one. And so is that what happened with Archimedes? Even though Indy very clearly says that Archimedes would not have been able to tell, as genius as he was, would not have been able to tell that there was continental drift and that the coordinates would be off. So he wouldn't have known that they would come back, except that they came back by accident, which then made it real. None of that makes sense. But there are moments throughout this that show that there is some clever thought. The problems that I have with it come in really with the time travel and the inconsistencies. Archimedes was killed in that siege. It was, I think, a year-long siege, and he was killed by a Roman soldier against orders. So he never would have been able to create this elaborate tube and hide his devices because he was killed before that would have been able to happen. So, I don't know. I don't know what to say about all that. It is an Indiana Jones film. You still feel that the John Williams score. You still feel that rise when the dun 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 comes on. Like that's exciting. That's great. I didn't like aliens in my Indiana Jones. I don't want time travel in Indiana Jones. It doesn't make sense. He kind of wants to die there, but then they bring him back, which leads to, I think, one of the better moments. Throughout the film, right? One of the things that I loved was the iconic scene from the first movie where Indy reaches back and he pulls his hat as the door is closing, the stone door is closing on him. In this film, though, he keeps losing his hat, right? But he isn't the one that continues to save it. Someone else, mainly Helena, saves it for him. And I think that's fantastic. So at the end, of course, Marion comes back, and there's a lot of cameos from John Rhys Davies is in this. A lot of throwbacks. So Marion does come back, which I think is one of the most touching and heartwarming and best scenes in the whole film. As many problems as I had with it, I think that made up for it. And honestly, I think the very last scene is as the iris is closing, as it's darkening, and you see Indy reach for the hat because, of course, as him and Marion are reuniting, she's going to make him wear it. And that was brilliant. So see it, stream it, or skip it. If you're a big Indy fan, I think definitely go see this movie. I don't know that you need to see it on a big screen, but, Harrison Ford is fantastic. The whole cast is good. This is obviously the last Harrison Ford Indiana Jones, I would assume. But maybe Helena could continue on, as they kind of set that up a little bit, is that she has this whole other life. So we'll see what happens. So, see it or stream it. It's better than Crystal Skull, and it's better than Last Crusade. So I guess that's a win, right? All right. I know I went very long. I apologize. So much I wanted to say that I didn't quite get to, but I appreciate everyone for watching, and please let me know what you think. Like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Leave comment below, and I'll see you after the next movie.